Interning at Pixar is probably my most favorite memory so far about my journey in my career of animation. Before working at Pixar, I was working 2 jobs at a burger place and a smoothie place, dreaming of breaking into animation and thinking it was impossible, especially because I didn't attend an art school and I wasn't able to make much connections or build my knowledge of what a good story portfolio consisted of for an animation gig. Everything I put into my first portfolio I learned from watching videos on YouTube, looking at other students' portfolios, professional portfolios, and it was with all of those things that I sort of just ended up guessing about maybe what they'd like to see from me, to just prove that take a chance on me, I can do this. I actually wasn't even planning on applying for the internship. It was my mom who actually saw that Pixar had an opening for just your regular story artist job. She came into my room one day and was like, knock, knock. You see Pixar's hiring? Yeah, Mom. Well, are you gonna apply? No. She actually sat down with me and watched me apply to working at Pixar from nothing. I thought it was the funniest thing in the universe. Look at me applying to Pixar. But if it wasn't for my mom pushing me, they never would have saw my application. Even though I was rejected, they asked me to instead apply for the internship. And so this is the portfolio I used to get the internship at Pixar. I'm gonna try and not make this video a roast of my old work. We're just gonna try and see the positives and focus on the good attributes of the portfolio, although it is bare bones, to help you with your portfolio and your work to get an internship that's similar or your first job. So let's just dive into it. Let's go. Okay, so the first piece we have here is probably a piece I'm still actually super proud of, even if it looks a little crusty. This was the piece I completed under my WIA mentorship program. It was kind of the first time I was ever taught storyboarding, and I was ever really pushed to create a full sequence and to pitch for the first time, to take notes, to get critiqued. I remember it being a really wonderful experience with Mia. Shout out to Mia. And I still think this is a really strong piece, even though my technical skills have evolved. It's really all about your story instincts. And I think that's what Pixar saw in this particular piece, was an instinct for story, for pacing, for shot choices. They saw I could draw, but I think in the back of their minds, they said, well, yeah, there's something to be desired in terms of draftsmanship, but technical things and draftsmanship can always be improved and taught. But instinct is something somebody is just born with. It's something innate that they have. You know, each storyteller, each artist that you meet is going to have a very distinct voice and something that they want to say through their work. And so, from what I understand, they really saw what I was passionate about. This piece was based upon Clarice Starling's story in, if you've ever seen Silence of the Lambs, it's the story of the screaming of the lambs, a very iconic scene, and I wanted to challenge myself to take a verbal story that was being told and make a sort of alternative opening to the film. A really good piece of advice that I have gotten in terms of how to make a really strong portfolio piece, it's always really smart to create a character introduction. You can do a lot with a character introduction. I wanted to encapsulate that feeling in this piece, to introduce Clarice's character, but also introduce who I was as a story artist. I like boarding things that are very dramatic. I relish in the little moments, the little acting choices. You know, I love horror. I love gothic, I love dark, I love dramatic, and I really wanted to say, this is my point of view, and these are the kind of things I want to create. A lot of the times a portfolio, especially in early students, and the first time I was making my portfolio, is that essentially it was just, you throw everything at the wall and hope something sticks. But I really believe that for this internship, what they're looking for is they're looking for a point of view and a voice. Not everybody has that at such a young age to enter an internship, but I know that that is something that they really liked about my work, is that it stood out and it did look different. You know, although I did look at, you know, CalArts portfolios and SCAD portfolios and all those sort of things, I needed to ask myself, I wanted to stand out in a really good way. The second piece that I included in my portfolio is a really short, I think it's somewhere around 45 panels, just like a little blurb of a scene. I don't recommend putting in a sequence that is like only 40 panels. It probably needed to be a little longer and, you know, have a beginning and an end. But similarly to my quid pro quo piece, I wanted this to showcase what kind of stories I wanted to tell and was inspired by. Again, it's dark, it's moody, it's dramatic, it's a moment between characters. It's something that I want to do. Early on in my interviews, they asked me, why do you want to be a story artist? And I remember my response, and maybe it wasn't eloquent at the time, but all I could really say was, I just see these scenes in my head all of the time, and I just can't help but put them onto paper. Like, I just see it so clearly. And this was one of those scene farts that I had in my head. I was like, I just gotta get this fart out. And this is what became of it. And so I just didn't have much else, and so I put this up on my portfolio, and that was really that. So this sequence, I think actually this was the first attempt at a storyboard I think I've ever done. And this was during the beginning of COVID, when people were working from home. And so I felt inspired by the relationship between a work from home mom and her daughter. I kind of wanted to show a little bit slightly more personal, a little comedic touch into my portfolio, because I already had those two really serious pieces. And so with this one, I wanted to play with physical humor, and I wanted to play with timing and stuff like that. And this was actually one of the pieces they said stood out in the portfolio, because I think it was just the creative use of shot choices. Like, my favorite bit, I still think is really funny and smart, is kind of having her foot reply to her mom in this like acting sort of way. And it's that sort of specificity in acting and in your boards that I think stood out to them, of like, oh wow, this is real, this is grounded, this seems honest. The last piece that I put into my portfolio, actually I didn't create until I think about a week before the deadline for the internships ended. When I was initially rejected from the Pixar position, I actually never received a rejection letter. Instead, I received an email from one of the people who was running the internships at the time, Derek Thompson. And we had a Zoom call, and he really saw something in my work that I didn't see at the time. He asked a really interesting question, because up until that point, my pieces were pretty serious, and he asked, can you be funny? And I honestly didn't know. I was like, for you, Mr. Pixar, I can try. And so he challenged me to create a story from a personal story, something that happened to me, an embarrassing moment, something that I see clearly in my head that I could translate into a storyboard. And so that is where I got my piece, My Good Confession. I literally did it in a week, and I applied. The deadline was like that Sunday. I completed it, I uploaded it on my website, and then it was submitted. Before I even uploaded it, I actually had another Zoom with Derek, and I pitched it to him. He gave me some feedback, I revised it, and then I submitted it. So all in all, the number of storyboards I had in my portfolio was the Quid Pro Quo, the Asylum one, Socks, and then the last one I did last minute, which was My Good Confession. So 4 pieces, which most recruiters will tell you is the magic number in terms of how many pieces you want to have in your portfolio, because 3 can seem too little and 5 is too much. But it wasn't enough to just have those pieces, especially when you're a student and you're not yet in the industry. You need to kind of prove yourself in terms of your draftsmanship skills. And so I included a few pieces that showed some character sketches, some still life, things that showed I know how to draw and I am teachable to draw better. All 4 pieces that I mentioned are linked in my description, so you are free to click on them, go through them, look, critique, I don't care, but just to give you an idea of what sort of things spoke particularly to the people who ran the Pixar internship. And it had been a few months since I had submitted the application, and I was really nervous. That kind of process usually takes forever. And so me and my mom decided we'd go for a little getaway to this tiny house in Florida, and it was a spectacular time together, just kind of forgetting my anxieties about the internship, taking my mind off things and on really good things like the beach, crab. And I remember I was laying in my bed and I got an email that they wanted to do an interview, and my world just, it turned upside down in that moment. It just was incredibly validating that even just getting the chance to kind of argue my case about why I really needed this opportunity was really life-changing. I remembered I interviewed on a Tuesday, and it was a couple days later I got an email and they wanted to ask me more questions, and I thought that was really odd, so I was like, yeah, okay. I remember preparing for the second interview, and my parents are in the office with me, and we're just like all on our knees together, just praying. Just like, God, please, like, let this be a victory. Like, let this be the moment that we all have really dreamed of for a really long time. And so the interview started, and I remember McKenna Jean, who wasn't there in my previous interview, who was there for the interview the second time, she's like, oh, we just forgot to ask you one more thing. And I'm just like, yeah, what is it? And she said, will you be a 2021 Pixar intern? And I think I was just stunned. Thinking about the journey of working, I'm getting emotional. I didn't expect this to get emotional. But thinking about how badly I wanted it, and thinking that there was no hope, or that nobody would want to take a chance on me. There were so many times where I wanted mentorship and I wanted people to teach me, but I was turned away. But if it wasn't for the internship, I would have never felt like it was something I could do. Individuality is very important. Having your own specific voice is super, super imperative to what they look for. They're not looking for somebody who can do everything. They're looking for somebody who can do a couple things really, really well. They own who they are and they own their voice. They're also looking for you in your portfolio, a personal piece, personal stories, anything that shows this is my point of view of the world, this is where I come from, this is what I have to offer and to share. Number 3, being teachable. I think it was actually a really cool opportunity for me to actually pitch my initial scene to Derek, to receive notes, to take the notes, and to apply it to my portfolio. I remember them saying that was one of the biggest reasons I was picked, was because I was teachable, that they would give me notes and I would address them. So I think that having that humility and having the eye and the communicative understanding of taking notes is something that they also really value. It's just, you're there to be a student, so they want to hire really good students. So that's the portfolio that got me the internship at Pixar. And everything was downhill from there. Just kidding. I hope you're inspired to juice up your own portfolio and to make pieces that studios are going to want to see a little bit of you in. That's all I got for you guys today, and go and make some amazing stuff.